So now we are going to talk about what is consciousness. Most of you here are aware that consciousness is a fundamental thing from where the whole study of psychology began. Starting from William Wundt to William James, Sigmund Freud, many of them, their theories were based on understanding consciousness. So most of them understood consciousness as human awareness, and they studied it from different perspectives. For example, the school of structuralism studied the structures of consciousness, namely perception, thinking, memory. What are the different structures that formulate or give rise to consciousness? Whereas the school of functionalism studied the functions of consciousness. What functions does it perform in human awareness? So for example, memory is one of the functions of consciousness. That's what William James talked about. Whereas Sigmund Freud, one of the most celebrated psychologist, talked about consciousness in terms of the three levels or layers of consciousness, which he talked about the unconscious and preconscious and the conscious structure, which by far is the most sublimest theory of consciousness that we had in psychology. Later on, the schools of behaviorism, cognitive sciences discarded the theories of consciousness and said they were more objective in their, more realist in their paradigm, more pragmatic or positivist in their paradigm, in which they said what is not seen cannot be studied, and hence if we can see behavior, we are only going to study behavior. So this conception around consciousness is like the fundamental block on which the entire study of psychology is basing, and which determines how we perceive a human being and his or her relationship to the larger world. Now, how is this consciousness studied in Indian psychology or the Indian knowledge systems? Like we discussed, unlike the modern sciences, which perceives reality as fundamental, as matter as the fundamental principle of reality, the Indian knowledge systems, specifically the Upanishads and Vedas, they do not consider matter as the final reality, rather matter as a projection or one of the manifestations of reality. What they posit is the final reality. We talked about it in the last class, is Sat Chit Anand, the truth, consciousness and bliss. So the final truth is in itself conscious, and out of that conscious awareness, due to its bliss, the entire manifestation is conceived of or is formulated. Now one has to really think about why did they call the ultimate reality as conscious. When we look even at the physical material level, and this is an argument that Sri Aurobindo posits in his magnum opus, The Life Divine, is if we were to believe that we came out of a big bang and things just naturally, magically arranged themselves into these different groups, into different formulations that led to the development of matter, and from that matter evolution just started happening. Can we really say that all of this was just chance and chaos? And that is where we question and we understand that even behind the principle of matter, if you have studied basic physics, you will know how matter arranges itself. We study it in terms of orbitals, how there is s orbital and p orbital. So what tells the oxygen atom to arrange itself into 2p orbitals and 1s orbital? What tells it? How does it know that it has to arrange itself in this way? Usually the logic that physicists give you is they follow the law of physics. But how is there a law without anybody governing the law? There must be something behind which is governing the law. You can take a very simple example. As human beings, we like to call ourselves intelligent. We as intelligent beings need a law to govern our moral behavior, and the law is overlooked by the governance or the courts or the judiciary of any space. So there is always something behind which is governing the law. That is why the law is there in the first place. And if we go by that idea, then we have to understand that that which is governing the law has some supreme intelligence or conscious awareness of itself. And this is the fundamental theory which the Vedic rishis took forward, and they understood and they scrutinized the different levels of arrangement of reality, right from the most material to the most subtler aspects of reality. And they said even beyond the most subtlest aspect of reality, there is still a law, and that law is governed by this supreme truth, which is called the Sanatan Dharma. That is why it is the eternal law. Sanatan means eternal, eternal both in terms of time and space, and dharma is the law of the being. The law of the being here refers to the law of the entire cosmos or creation. So the being which is overlooking of the entire working of the consciousness is entire working of the cosmos is referred to as the Satchidananda Brahma, which can be form and formless. Different schools have experienced it in different ways. We'll not go into it. But we understand now that consciousness here refers to the very nature of reality. The entire reality, the entire cosmos, the entire creation is consciousness. That is what the Vedic rishis posits. And human awareness is one part or one aspect or one level of that consciousness. There is a consciousness in matter itself. Some of you may have studied the dual nature of matter, in which we did the double slit experiment, right? The double slit experiment shows us that matter, when it is observed, changes its nature, versus when it is not observed, carries more of a wave nature. If it is observed, it carries the particle nature. It tells us something, that matter has some intelligence. Now, there are many recent theories and recent discoveries in the areas of quantum physics, which some of you may like to know about, which talk about which say that now from your consciousness, through your consciousness, you can connect to the entire universe. There was a article in Popular Mechanics which talked about this. That recent discoveries find that through your consciousness you can actually connect to the entire universe through what is called as quantum entanglement. There are other theories which argue either about panpsychism, which agrees that consciousness is the fundamental reality, or later theories of conscious realism, which says, well, consciousness is the fundamental reality, but we still can't assume that matter has consciousness. That is a debate going on in modern science. We understand where it is coming from. It is coming from a different worldview, a worldview which has divorced itself from religion and science, when it divorced itself during the period of Renaissance, largely due to the influence of people like René Descartes, who said that religion is a separate inquiry and science is a separate inquiry. That's why matter and spirit, they don't come together. Whereas in India, in Bharat, matter and spirit always walked together. Science was very much a part of spirituality, and spirituality was very much a fundamental part of science. We had the science of mathematics, language, architecture, metallurgy, chemistry. We had so many sciences, and they were all built on these ideas or understanding from a spiritual perspective. That is why consciousness is not seen as something which is only there either in the spirit or in the matter. We understand that consciousness has many layers and gradations to it, which we'll talk more in detail in some time. Now, when we talk about consciousness as the fundamental reality, we have to ask ourselves, how does this consciousness then lead to the arrangement of the physical nature or the world that we live in? So one of the understandings, and here I'll be largely referring to Sri Aurobindo's writings in the Life Divine, where he argues that the spirit in its formlessness to form the material reality involves itself into a state of self-forgetfulness, where it turns into the dense, dark material reality. So if we look even into a matter, into an atom, we find, if you'll find some of the videos on the arrangement of subatomic particles, you will find that within the matter you have the electron and proton and the neutron. Within the electron and proton and neutron you have the subatomic matter. You can go down to the state of a quark. Now the state of a quark is something wherein there is a lot of energy, there is a lot of energy, but it is not conscious, it has not yet released itself. However, once the energy is released, the matter no longer remains the same, the atom no longer remains the same, it transforms into a very different state. And this is what he's referring to as the supreme consciousness, which is conscious in itself. Out of its energy, out of its chitta shakti, or the force of that consciousness, creates this entire domain of material and other levels of reality. We will talk more in details about the principle of this force of consciousness, which is called chitta shakti, which is also called Maya in the Vedic text, and later in the Sankhya Yoga the same force is referred to as the Prakriti, that which gives rise to forms and names. Prakriti, which gives rise to forms and names. So next we will talk about how from this consciousness as the fundamental reality, the entire reality is formed out of the unformed through the workings of this force, which is the universal energy, which is the force behind, which is referred to as Maya or the Prakriti.